quite a packed agenda actually for the session today. And usually you are known to Lara already, and my name is Josepha. I had the big pleasure of joining the Climate Choice team just a couple of weeks ago. So I'm now part of the marketing team, and I'm super happy to then also welcome you to this choice event. It's already choice event number 76. So that is really impressive. And today, what we have on the plate is that we want to share with you some best practices on how to make Scope 3 action our business. And now you might be wondering, I mean, best practices, this is usually something, you know, where something has already been implemented and tested. And by whom might this have been this time? And it's actually by the beautiful climate community that you see here, which we also had the pleasure to welcome at the Impact Hub in Berlin on the 12th of September for the Climate Transformation Summit. It was the 5th time that the Climate Transformation Summit took place, the first time then also face-to-face in Berlin. And from this beautiful community, we collected insights, learnings, etc., that we want to share with you on 5 key areas, so to say, that are then also very relevant for driving Scope 3 action. But more on that in just a second, because there is, of course, the summit that we had. And now we are here today to present to you again a little bit who we are from Climate Choice, what we do, why it matters. So this part will be taken over by Lara. Then we will jump into the highlights from the summit itself, and then also help you kickstarting your decarbonization journey. So lots of, very, I think, inspiring input that we have on the table here today. And we are very much looking forward to then also getting your questions in. And this is why we would like to ask you to actually try out the Zoom function in the chat. So if you haven't yet, then navigate yourself, please, to the chat and type in your name and also where you're joining from, so that we get a little bit of an insight also on where you are actually coming from and joining us from today. So go to the chat.
I think it's here called Fragen and Antworten or Q&A, depending on your settings. So if you're wondering why it's not called chat, you typically find it on the bottom or on top. And we would see a number popping up. So one of you needs to dare to be the first person. Sorry? Yes, now it's popping up.
Here we go. Colin from Spain. Hi. Hi, Colin.
Perfect. Jan Patrick from Zurich, Melanie from Dublin, awesome. I'm right now located in Düsseldorf, which is very rainy and feels like autumn today.
You're not the only one in Berlin, it's the same, Lara.
It's exactly the same, perfect. Yeah, but looks everyone found the chat, that's awesome. Or Olaf, Ralf also from Düsseldorf, that's nice. Great.
Next time we meet the two together to do the webinar from one place.
Yes.
But cool. Now that we have all established also the chat function, please also feel free to ask your questions in the chat. So we will be looking at it. I will try to curate them either throughout the presentation or at the end, but please put them in there. Yes. So we really would like to make this interactive, even though you can't now speak up because it's in the webinar function here in Zoom. It's still your forum also to ask your questions. Yeah. So because it should be interactive as it can be. And with that, Lara, can I actually hand it over to you for a little bit of an introduction again on Climate Choice and the Climate Transformation Summit?
Yeah, I love to. I think you have to stop sharing the slides so that I can rule over you. Exactly, perfect. Then let's see. So, still also want to give you the pleasure of a full screen. I think that should be now available to you. Great. Yeah, thanks a lot, Josepha, for the introduction. We love to have you in the team now, rocking our communication and marketing and also the summit. I guess some of you have been in touch with her. So that would be actually my question as well. Put in the chat if you were also part of the summit. So maybe everything we talk here today you have been experiencing, then please also share your experiences and insights over the course of the next hour. So maybe you want to write in there, yes, I was part of the summit. Or if the whole topic is new to you, then also say, no, I wasn't part of the summit. And that's what I wish to get answers for today. So maybe we can also tackle those questions specifically. But then, yeah, the why, what, how behind the summit, behind our webinars also, and then also today's session. So what we do at the Climate Choice, a climate tech startup from Berlin, we really follow our mission to accelerate Scope 3 action and do that with our climate intelligence platform. But why we do that is very much because of this shocking number. So why does climate matter anyway, right? We have so many crises, we have so many different topics, even in sustainability, there are like tons of areas what to look at too, and what not as well. But then the time is ticking, and actually we do have set a worldwide 1.5 degree target. So we want to stay below that if possible, or well below 2 degrees. And yeah, the time for 1.5 degrees is actually coming very close. So it's now 4 years that we would have irreversibly come over that point. So we are right now already in like moving up and downs over a year, but it's not yet the global status, so to say. And within the next 4 years, we still have that window of opportunity to really bring in actions that might not stop where we are right now, but in 5, 10, 20 years have a tremendous impact, and then for sure the future ahead. And that's what we kind of see, and what I love to remind us always when we talk about climate. It's not about fancy buzzwords, and it's not about something to put in a marketing report, but very much the reality we all live in. So where we stand today, more or less, is that we do have a lot of climate targets, which is awesome. As said, we have a worldwide 1.5 degree target, which we all agreed on in the Paris Agreement. But then the pledges that we have in place so far, they differ quite a lot. So some countries plan to be climate neutral in 2060, which is just not possible. It's for all of us 2050 latest. And then also in companies, it varies a lot. So in some areas, companies are faster and slower and so on. But then it really is about shared actions, and it's not just about the long-term perspectives. And that's what we also at the summit discussed a lot. It's very much how we get into action right now, because the positive news is also the first reduction efforts will be the easiest ones. They're very much tied to like using renewable energies, getting into energy efficiency, getting into shared actions. The hardest part will be actually in the next decades, and when we talk about the last few percentages. So the faster we act right now, the easier it will be later. Or the other way around, if we act very late, the need for actions will be even higher. So talking about business, that's we are all not just in the climate and environmental area in our everyday life, but also there, this is a slide basically from the UN. It's very clear, like either we are part of a successful transformation journey and lead in that area as a company as well, or there's literally no business at one point or the other, but specifically already now where companies are already lagging behind in taking actions. And yeah, the good news on the other side, it's always a little bit shocking to see those realities. But then the good news are companies have really shifted, or the whole market has been shifted. And that's again, like not coming from the climate activist areas, but very much from the business world. So the Business Economic Forum has just published this year a report saying that the shift from 2022 to 2023 was really tremendous, where like 3 times more of business leaders, so in total over 60%, agree that right now the business case for sustainability is clear, and that also the benefits outweigh the costs. And when you talk about which kind of opportunities are out there, that's what we very much explored at the summit, and where we'll not go too deep in now, but we look into the whole next hour, so to say. But talking specifically in the area of climate, it really becomes clear that it's not longer an area where we talk about your own emissions in scope 1 and 2 and like maybe offsetting and getting into quick solutions, but that it's very much about a transformative journey where you take your business partners, your whole supply chain into that mission of leading in the market, reducing emissions, and thereby also tackling customer needs, stakeholder needs, offering low carbon products, and also using all these benefits that can come with a transformation journey, that you really focus on innovation, on efficiency, and accelerating also new technologies. And why then the supply chain? So I was just saying it a little bit on the side, like why is not my direct emissions as a company that I can manage so much easier? Why are they not in the focus so much? I mean, like for sure, that's a place where you need to start and where you have the biggest control over. But then it's over and over shared that most emissions come from the supply chain and are those so-called Scope 3 emissions. And that is this overview from the Greenhouse Gas Protocol, where you see in Scope 3 in your supply chain, you have an area that is before your own company and then after your company, and it splits up in 15 different categories. And typically this first category, purchased goods and services, has a tremendous impact on your emissions, and then also in your downstream. So everything that's happening after your company is mostly used of goods that has, again, like a really big impact. So it is like when you don't know where to start, then these two categories are often very important to look at. And then the number that's always so impressive that comes from CDP is actually that on average, those Scope 3 emissions are 26 times bigger than your Scope 1 and 2. And that explains why looking at supply chains makes so much sense, because the emissions from your suppliers add up to your own Scope 3 emissions. And that makes it also so complex, because managing those emissions, reducing those emissions can relate to managing also hundreds and thousands of suppliers. And globally, that adds up to the topic of increasing the importance of supply chains, because there is this number from BCG that 50% of worldwide emissions are just locked in 8 supply chains. And as said, no company is alone in that challenge. So often we hear that, or I think I have that in every single conversation touching on Scope 3, that companies kind of excuse that they have so many emissions in Scope 3 and kind of feel that they have a very specific own challenge. But then it's very much across industries that most emissions actually come from the supply chain. You do see here on the top that sometimes your emissions from energy usage and your direct own emissions can be quite a lot, but then on average there's quite a big impact from the supply chain, and it can come to 90% and more. And talking about all the barriers and all the challenges, when you start that conversation, and we will go into it more deeply, we went in the summit quite a lot into it, you find so many complex areas, and I feel it always helps to cluster them a little bit. And again, that's from the World Economic Forum, done very nicely, so that you can start to see also where do my journey actually starts. And there are so many different reasons why to look into it and barriers to overcome, but really to go one step after the other. So here you have also ABC, which would be step 1, 2, 3, so to say. And to just highlight them first, most companies actually start with calculating their emissions in Scope 3 and want to move away from average data to specific supplier data. So that is in the first challenge to go into. Then you learn okay, it's not just collecting the data, it is about engagement and getting into action. Then you have the complexity of how do you motivate your suppliers, how do you get standards set, how do you move into action, and then those actions can be related to your product. So how can you redesign it maybe together with your partners? To just give you already some highlights we're going to look into later. And then, those different challenges come also with solutions. And Josefa has been sharing before, for sure, all of those are not solutions we can say they have been tested in the last 20 years, we are safe. But we do see which of them have already the biggest impacts. So it very much starts with transparency, with data, with awareness, but then it goes into we really need to reduce emissions, we need to see the impact. And that has this big area of where you have the most leverage effect, so to say, which is engaging the suppliers and then from there moving into building ecosystems rather than handling the whole topic alone from your own company. And yeah, that brings me back to, we moved, so to say, through the why is climate important, then what is the area of scope 3, and then how. That's what we do at the Climate Choice. We support companies basically with our climate intelligence platform to track the information from their suppliers, get visibility and move into action. But doing so, yeah, the three founders, Jascha, Ray and me, we always have the people in mind. So we do know that data and technology is always just a foundation to get humans empowered to take better decisions, which we call climate choices, to reduce emissions. And that was leading us back to the summit, which we have been starting in 2020, when we also started up as a company. And we're super happy to have this year 100 people in person at the summit, and share now today all the insights that we gathered together with those experts. And that would bring me back to Josefa. I hope that gave a good first introduction to the summit and what we are doing.
Almost definitely.
The session. Great.
Thank you so much. And thanks again for the introduction also to who we are, what we do. And now you might also ask yourself, this, one thing of, okay, we meet at the summit, but then what did we actually talk about? And there's always this big question of how to move really into scope 3 action. And we use this as an opportunity to actually ask our experts and practitioners that we know in the field of scope 3 in order to find out what is on their mind, what kind of challenges do they currently perceive, but also where do they see the biggest fields of opportunities. And what we did is that we actually distilled 5 key focus areas, which are namely supplier data for transparency and resilience, AI and advanced technologies for agile decision-making at scale and supplier engagement at scale, supplier climate engagement strategies, sustainability and climate as business cases, and also the changing roles of CPOs and CSOs as change makers in this whole field. And at the summit itself, we already explored these topics. And of course, we can't all now travel in time, go back to the summit, revisit it. But what we would like to do is to still bring these topics to you today. So what we would like to do is to go through all of these 5 different topics, giving you a little bit of an insight again on why they are important, the different voices and questions in the room, and then also share with you the key insights from the climate community that we gathered face-to-face in Berlin. So
I would raise my hand very quickly, just because I saw that this question already came up. So yes, we are sharing all the insights for you today online, but then afterwards, as you registered, you will get further information, and we actually captured everything. So Josefa will go into that a bit, so you don't have to write everything down, you get information later.
Correct. This is, thank you so much. What I just wanted to say next, because we have compiled everything in a best practice guide. So yeah, hold back your horses. This is going to be your read for the weekend, hopefully. It's very nicely curated. So we've got all the insights from our experts that joined us. All the chapters that you see here are the ones that we will also be looking at today. So now you get it with our voices, basically, and afterwards, even in more detail than on a piece of paper, black on white. And yeah, I think it's very insightful. At least for me, it was a very good read to then also get deeper into the topic and to get to know who is then also working with us on the topic of scope 3. And with that being said, we're here today for the Choice event, and this is also what we would like to start. So looking now at the key takeaways for the different industry areas, where to start best if it wasn't with the first topic of supplier data for transparency and resilience. And I think, I mean, this is a topic where everybody, who's here in this call has already made up his or her mind before, because it comes with a lot of opportunities, but then also challenges. And I think, I mean, we can all agree that data is key, yeah? So to transparency and resilience. And this not only when it comes to scope 3 action, but actually when you look at all the different supply chain management processes that you can see. But zooming in now on Scope 3 action, data is particularly important when it comes to tracking emissions, obviously, so that we can really also identify where are our carbon hotspots and that we can make informed decisions which supply chain partners we should prioritize then also for further engagement in order to really drive the initiatives for decarbonization where it matters most. Yet, all these opportunities set aside, looking at data is also one of, I find, the biggest Pandora's boxes in that whole field, because there's key challenges when it comes to, for example, data availability. So first of all, right, do we have all the data that we need? How is it communicated in the different formats, languages, sources, etc.? How can I access it at all? Yeah, there's a lot of then also scraping needed already when you look at public data sources. A second piece that always comes up is the piece of data quality, or the question of data quality. So is the data that I'm seeing actually trustworthy? Am I looking at the right data? So already matching, for example, the company that you would like to investigate with the data that you have at hand. Does it really match? And is the data also standardized? So can I also cross-compare across companies, but also across time? And then within all of this data that we've gathered, how can I best drive actionable insights so that I can really work with it? And all of these topics themselves are already, I would say, quite challenging, but it becomes even more complex when we look at the fact that they are all intertwined. So it's not a singular challenge to tackle, but it's something that needs to be tackled holistically. And this is, of course, where a lot of questions are coming up and a lot of different opinions. And what we heard also at the Climate Transformation Summit is one of the biggest questions: are we all lost in this data challenge? Yeah, is this like the perfect data paradox that we are trapped in? And a lot of people are saying that it's actually, now that we have all these regulations coming up, digital product passports, etc., that the challenge is moving further and further from the piece of data collection to data validation and management. And a lot of people also say that while we are moving into this age of having more emission data available, more transparency across the supply chain, this is now also our time to act. This is now the moment where we need to make use of it. But of course, you also need to check that we don't get lost, so to say, in all the challenges that we named before. And I think, Lara, this is a very good moment in time to hand it over to you, because you will now present us the key highlights also from the summit on that topic.
Yes, so as Josefa highlighted, there are so many different areas for data to look into, like what is a challenge around having the right emission data, but then also not to stop just at the emission data collection and then get your hands off again from the suppliers and once a year knock at their door. So that was very much what we discussed at the summit. So I'm giving you insight there. We had 100 people coming from sustainability and procurement area. So everyone very much working on that topic. Mostly the sustainability managers having been collecting those data for the past few years, and now the procurement people being kind of moving towards being the new experts in getting this data, and then also being asked a lot from the suppliers, what are these information for? Why do you need it? And why do you not just collect the CO2 data, but even more data often? So that's what we get as best practice or key insight. As said, a best practice is something we define as being tested for 10 years. So we said it's a key insight. That really building trust was the most wording, so to say, that come up in all the workshops and discussions. We had the flying word, so to say, of building a chain of collaboration in your supply chain, that this is very much the mission and not just collecting data. So that's whatever you're doing when you contact your suppliers. I guess you're already doing that when you work in procurement, but then really bringing that mindset into the whole company, that whatever you do with your suppliers is about a mutual exchange. It's about a communication process and also building long-term trust, because as what we saw in the beginning, this journey will continue for the next few decades. So all of your suppliers that bring in a lot of emissions because you're buying from them, they also have the power to reduce it with you. So you really need to also make sure that they are motivated, that they understand what you're doing. And yeah, for the better and worse, go with you into that journey. So after setting this kind of trustworthy communication area, you also need to communicate what is actually your standard. Like, have you set science-based targets, for example? Is that something you want to see from your suppliers as well? Do you have a specific standard in data sharing? Do you have specific information that are important for you? So we very much had the strong discussion all over where we stand also with the climate choice behind, to not just collect emission data, but really also understand what is a whole concept of a company working in that area. So do they have climate targets? Do they go into actions already? And then, make it also part of your procurement process. So it's nothing that just the sustainability team can do and ask every year, like in September. Mostly you guys have been doing a lot in reporting, I guess, with all the different certifications being out there right now. To not just once a year ask for the data and then run around, but very much make it a continuous journey. So whenever you accept new suppliers, request these information. Whenever you have training or review calls every year, make it part of their reviewing. If there's a supplier scoring, make those information being part of it, and so on. So find a way how to integrate it in procurement, and join forces so you can like enhance the leverage effect of sustainability and procurement. And then last but not least, be pragmatic. So that is also, we all wish to be like 20 years ahead, but then we really need to start with the first steps. So that's why also at the summit we worked with a maturity mapping that we share in with our customers typically. There are many different ways how to use it. It's basically a strategy tool. Cluster your suppliers whenever you have information from them. Don't design a one-fits-all strategy, but try to be as granular as needed, not as possible, and then find out how you can work with the different segments of suppliers fitting to their need and climate maturity. And then last wording, in being pragmatic, we all want to have the highest standards possible. That can be sometimes overwhelming. So we did discuss a lot in the summit. Being pragmatic also means to be sure when you set your standards, you have high minimum standards. So at least go with something where you can say, that's what I want from everyone. And then build on top of that from the suppliers that are already able to take actions, and the others you have to enhance and bring to the same level. I love to go more into it, but more is in the best practice guide. So handing over back to you, Josefa.
Thank you. And that being said, also all the links to the materials, as for example, the climate maturity metrics that you see here, are linked in the best practice guide. So once you download it, then you can also access these tools, which are very helpful. And now with that, moving forward to the second topic for today, which is AI and tech for agile decision-making at scale. And I think what we've already understood now in that very first piece is that everything around supplier data can actually make the topic of Scope 3 action and engagement quite challenging. And in that context, also, one of the key discussions at the Climate Transformation Summit this year was around AI and tech and how they can be used to make supplier data management and engagement more efficient, effective, and then also scalable. And in fact, there's a lot of opportunities that come with it, because also when we look at other supply chain management areas, for example, forecasting, inventory management, not sure who's involved in that, but I saw it when I was working in that piece, where really forecasting accuracy and inventory management increased a lot in quality because of data-driven decisions that you can take. And now, as we are moving and shifting focus towards this topic of sustainability, as this is also becoming more important, both for sustainability departments itself, but then also for supply chain and procurement, I think there is a lot of then also opportunities opportunity when it comes to collecting emission data, tracking sustainability metrics over time, to then also improve accuracy and consistency in these fields, but then also be able to really go into tailored engagement. Because as Lara was saying, there's not one fits all approach, so to say. So we should really then also use the data at hand and use then also technology to analyze it to fit our engagement to where it's needed and to the suppliers that we are working with. And yet there's a lot of questions still in the room, because I think the theoretical piece where we think, yes, of course, AI is there and, you know, we all want to use it is clear. But then how do we really move this also into action? How can we enable technology enhancement and also usage in organizations itself? And these were just one of the many questions that we saw in the room at CTS. So where a lot of people are saying, yes, we need technological support in decision making, because otherwise decarbonization at scale isn't possible. But then also there's a lot of question, as I was saying, still on what kind of technology can be used. And with that, I would actually like to hand it over again to you, Lara. So maybe you can tell us from the insights again also, what can AI actually be used for, zooming in really on Scope 3 action? What are the key challenges though, and how to overcome them?
Yeah, I love to. So maybe first of all, we also started at the summit with a quote saying that 60% of procurement leaders have already taken the decision to look into AI. I feel that's quite a high number. It's always depending on the study what you find. But as Josefa said, there's quite a lot of interest, and everyone is like wondering, yes, there could be an opportunity, but then it's also costly, or it's a new process, or it's just a buzzword. So there is both sides, a lot of skepticism, and then also motivation to go into action using these tools. And that's what we very much looked into as well, like seeing who stands where and what is already there. And everyone said, okay, AI is really just a tool. I think we are seeing, I haven't been there for the .com bubble, but I assume it's a little bit the same, that for a while everything gets digitalized, everything got to the internet. And now it's the same thing. Like AI is not like rocket science. I mean, it becomes rocket science, but then first it is very much like, it helps you to accelerate processes and to automate. So that is the first step. It doesn't mean it solves everything, and it for sure right now doesn't solve human decision making and also next steps in like creativity and making strategies and plans. So what we very much discussed is, when you use AI for data collection, specifically then also supplier climate data, there's still a high need for checking this data, making it part of your procurement processes or integrating it into your own systems and so on. Make sure that the formats that are used from whatever AI tool are fitting to your own data standards, that way around. So that it is really integratable, because just having AI is not solving everything. Mostly these tools are optimized to increase scalability, automation, and so on. And then also in your company, often these tools are very easy to use because they are so automated, but then still then there are certain knowledge gaps when it comes to integration, when it comes to also maybe training in AI or defining the frameworks that you need or the boundaries in which such a tool is working, because it really just works on what you one-time program and then it runs for itself, so to say. And then, it brings certain success factors. So if you do use it for collecting supplier data, for example, it really brings this validation. Often it can be trained, or it does have already a proof system in it. So it's not just you checking an Excel file, trying to see from sustainability reports if the numbers are right or whatever, but you can have an AI just going through hundreds and thousands of documents and data points and check if the sources are fitting. So for sure you have a certain risks still in there, but you can do like a plausibility check. For example, someone claims to have science-based targets. You can easily check the database if that's true. You can see if the emissions fit to what is reported in a sustainability report and so on. And that saves on both sides time, because the suppliers do not have to put in for the 10th time the information if they have been publishing it already in a CDP report on their website, in a sustainability report, and so on. You can do your homework first using an AI tool and gather all this information and have your understanding before you ask for certain information that are maybe missing or they were not published yet. Yeah, it can increase the storage of information, so you can get more data easily together. We always have the saying like, yeah, data is just as valuable as you use it. It's not about having it in an Excel file and then look once in a year in it and then nothing is there, but having it in a format that you can integrate it in different decision-making processes, use it for sustainability reporting, but then mainly also for looking forward, doing your planning and procurement, maybe also scenario planning on next budgets and the impact on how to reduce emissions. And yeah, in the end, that ties into, yeah, it can help you build strategies. So the data is really just the foundation, and then the decision makers can really save time and work on the things that are essential, because right now a lot of people are blocked, I would say, in just reporting and looking backwards and gathering data, checking it, and so on. We had yeah, customers who had before like sometimes 1 or 2 people working a full year on it, and then yeah, these people now just have the data and can really use the time to work on things looking forward and build up their own roadmap moving into action. That's over to you, Josefa.
We're actually not yet.
Sorry. Okay,
So
that's perfect.
To go into it, but maybe just very shortly looking at the
yeah,
time.
I'm too much. Yeah, I'm always a little bit passionate talking to everything. So if you want to reach out later, having a conversation with me, I'm delighted. Yeah, saving time, being more efficient, having more data, go into tailored approaches with your suppliers because you understand where they stand, and not just reach out with the hundreds of emails, but saying, hey, because you have this score, what we already created from the data we found on you, you can go into a tailored approach. You can easily scale your whole programs when you use technology that's supporting you, and you reduce the risk of yeah, human factors, I would say, and missing information and data points, and then can also increase yeah, your actions by moving into applying these roadmap approaches rather than just data analysis.
Cool.
That was quicker.
It indeed was. Thank you so much. And it's very insightful. And I think now that we've covered this whole topic of data, and we already talked so much about how it can be used then also for tailored supplier engagement, this is a perfect point in time to actually also come to that topic. So supplier climate engagement strategies, what's all about it? And I think everybody who's here on the call, I mean, you are most likely already touching that piece, so you're already engaging with your suppliers, and that is very good, because there's the recent study also from CDP and BCG, we can also share it with you later in the chat from this year, which again highlighted a lot of opportunities, but then also challenges when it comes to supply chain engagement, because actually companies that are actively engaging with their suppliers are about 7 times more likely to have set the Scope 3 targets within the 1.5 transition plan. And yet this sounds very good, but on the other side, there are apparently still a lot of challenges to that topic, because if you then look at the numbers of the companies that do so, there's only 40% that currently engage their suppliers on climate issues, and a mere 10% collaborate closely with them. Yet again, this is a challenge itself, because if you are postponing supplier engagement, well, then obviously this also heightens supply chain risks, but also heightens the path to emission reductions. Yeah, so it makes it way steeper. Of course, if you start later, then at one point in time, the path will become steeper. And there is a lot of then also talk about this whole topic, because a lot of the companies or representatives of companies that we had sitting with us at the Climate Transformation Summit this year were saying that they're currently really challenged by the fact that Scope 3 decarbonization requires a fundamental shift in supplier relationships. Then they are still then also wondering, how can they really incentivize their suppliers to overcome reluctance in sharing data across the value chain? And also, they are looking into the key success factors for effective supplier collaboration in both data management, but then also in action for decarbonization. So what is it really that needs to be done? What to focus your energy on, in a world where, of course, resources are also limited. And with that, Lara, I would like to hand it over to you again to guide us a little bit through the essential building blocks, then also for effective supplier engagement strategies that we've been seeing at the Climate Transformation Summit this year.
Yes, and as Josefa and I are talking so much, I would also love to remind you to ask questions. So I just answered one, which was about data quality, how you can ensure that for AI. Maybe you look quickly into it for the person who asked. So please just shout them out and we try to answer them along the way. And yeah, to build the building blocks for your climate engagement program, what we really saw is like, yeah, it needs to have a connection. So it's not just that one person in your company is working on the whole topic, but like very much supply chain in general is like one of your essential areas where you collaborate with everyone outside, various different stakeholders. Not everyone is a supplier. Some people are more business partners when they are also downstream. We had it before on the slide as building ecosystems as well. So it's really something also that externally connects to so many people, and the same must be true in your company. So it needs to connect to your sustainability team, all efforts, but then also you need to have C-level support and often different areas in your company as well being involved. We see innovation teams or the strategic teams and finance and so on really going into it as well. And then, building trust is the one way to go. So that's where everything starts. And the reason for that is because you want to build long-term relationships. So really having also feedback loops from your suppliers when you gather the data, when you want to set next steps, when you build up those standards that you want to accept in your supply chain. It's very much about getting the feedback from the suppliers. That's what we have also with the Climate Choice. Often when the suppliers have their own profiles in the platform and they do review calls and so on with us, they bring in so many information what they want to improve. So often your business partner already knows where the way is to go, but they're a little bit unsure maybe how you are part of that journey as well. So really use the ones that are outperforming and that really want to be part of your journey and get into that relation. And then in the end, to be able to address also the certain needs of the suppliers, build up an approach where you can cluster your suppliers, where you can really understand who of your suppliers has a which climate maturity. So maybe it's in level 1 to 3, or it's in a low maturity, high maturity, and average, and so on. You need to define what it means for you. Maybe someone who has no data available, no actions taken, no targets already set is in low or 0. And then others who have already climate targets, who have already an implementation of action, who can report data, they are very high. And with those, you might want to define best practices that you can also share with the others. Moving farther, I would say.
Yeah, thank you. And before we actually move on, there was a question in the chat, Lara, that I would also like to ask you. So there was the question from Urban asking on how important is it actually, and I interpret the question now, and maybe you let me know if it's right or wrong, but to do your own homework, basically. So doing your own PCF or life cycle assessment first, in order to then also be able to give more of a guideline towards your suppliers, how you would like to have the data presented, formulated, etc., in order to increase data quality, but then also reliability.
Exactly, perfectly makes sense. So that's a little bit what we had in the beginning when you start with collecting data. That's very much the starting point. Like really work first with your own information, understand what you're already doing in your company, try to find out which systems you are using, which standards you are using. If you have, or which kind of, if you are in procurement, you might not be aware of all the actions that are already happening in sustainability. So understand which kind of targets a company have, which data sources you need also to be able to report to certain things, which information. So for example, if you have science-based targets, it's important for you to understand which of your suppliers have that as well. If it's just for the CO2 emissions, then really also have your first average calculation using average data from databases, and then from there go into specific data tracking from your suppliers so that you can also understand if emissions go down or not, because just using average data will not allow you to understand that. So it's very much about starting in your own company, getting together in sustainability procurement teams, at least getting your C-level with it, see where you stand, which targets you have, and understand if there's already a roadmap, build up that roadmap, and then get your suppliers into it and be able to communicate to them what you wish for, and then see how they can be part of that journey. I hope that's answering in way too many sentences.
Well, I at least can't speak up, but you can type another question in the chat if we didn't answer it now. And there's another question from Nicholas, and Lara, maybe you can answer that written, because we would like to move on. Super. Okay, great. So we did a good job in in answering it. Thanks again, Lara, for that. And now I think we all understood that climate and Scope 3 decarbonization isn't a peripheral topic anymore, but it's actually becoming center stage in business strategies. And there's many different forces also that have been putting sustainability to the center of business practices. As for example, regulatory pressures. So there's a lot of frameworks and then also regulations. And for example, a Paris Agreement, EU Green Deal, all promoting then also this topic of transparency and long-term considerations also in economic and financial activity. Society, I think if you just look at yourself, right, there's more and more emphasis then also on sustainability in economic behavior, but then also workplace priorities. So how is your potential employer also set up when it comes to sustainability commitment? Investors, who are more pushed, but also pushing themselves for sustainability in their practices. If you look, for example, as the sustainability finance taxonomy, net zero banking alliances, all trying to then also simplify the classifications of investments according to their sustainability imperatives, but then also trying to reorient capital flows. And of course, the topic of innovation. So let's not, always say, okay, this is only regulations that we need to fulfill, market dynamics that we, somehow need to then also accept, but they can also really function as an incentive for new product strategies to position yourself competitively in the market on the consumer side, but then also on the supplier or buyer side. And with that being said, I would really very much like to echo just a couple of voices in the room, then also that we heard, because this is, I think, one of the topics where I was most interested in seeing the polarities of how people see it. Yeah, because there is some voices, of course, where they say, okay, all of these regulations, they are such a huge burden on EU competitiveness. But on the other side, there's also the ones that are already seeing how Scope 3 reporting and climate action can be a driver of business growth. And yet with these polarities on the two sides, the question, of course, comes up, how can we ensure that Scope 3 action really evolves from being seen or perceived as a burden to being perceived as a business case that drives competitive advantage? And with that, Lara, handing it over to you for the insights from our summit. And maybe also looking again at the times.
Yes,
leave some time for Izzy in the end.
Yeah, I would also say, from now we might also invite you to then dive deeper in the best practice guide that you get. So yeah, as said in the beginning, the business cases are clear. Having emission transparency allows you to report, but it also allows you to fulfill certain standards in the market. So there are different ratings, there are reporting standards. You need to have your Scope 3 emissions now in place. It's not longer like a nice to have, as a necessity, and it allows you then to go into collaboration and really take actions, which allows you to reduce emissions, therefore risk, and also have your business leading in that area. I think there's a second one coming up, right?
Yes.
And that is very much like, overcoming the challenges that we see in this area is really not being top down, reach out a hand to your suppliers. So that's something we discussed in our main panel a lot. And we had Canan from Henkel sharing, who's like leading the net zero progress. And that's very much what they do in their climate supplier program as well, to integrate everyone and have it like also cross departmentalized in their own company, but then also activate like different segments of suppliers and not do that isolated. So that was also a question here in the chat before, like not just maybe with your own suppliers, but also work across industries, see what others are doing, get inspired, and also learn from there. And that's very much what we do in our Scope 3 action group also, which we introduced. So getting companies from different industries together to like also get out of that funnel that's maybe happening in your own company and industry, and really learn from others that are right now doing this whole decarbonization journey in the supply chain, and find out what you can already copy as best practice, and also see to get like very practical support of others who are in the same shoes.
Cool. Thank you so much. And there's a little bit of a back and forth there also between Lara and Nicholas in the chat. So I think this is leading to an interesting discussion on how to be inclusive and thinking as broad as possible, but also how to start pragmatically. And I think this is what Lara also tried to say in the beginning. So of course, you start with your big bets first, and then you're increasing the funnel then also for inclusivity and collaboration. And with that, coming to the last piece of today, because I think this question actually brings us there. So, I mean, what is, also the changing roles when it comes to CPOs and CSOs as as change makers? And I mean, we have now already been looking, at the topic of sustainability becoming a business imperative across companies. And with that also, the roles and accountabilities within companies are shifting quite a lot. And if you, for example, yourself look at how procurement was set up still a couple of years ago and even up until now, the primary focus in the KPIs was usually on cost management and then also operational efficiency. But now more and more CPOs are actually coming at the forefront of integrating sustainability into procurement decisions, which makes it a more difficult job because of the balancing art to really look at environmental priorities and business value at the same time. And meanwhile, then also chief sustainability officers who, from a personal experience, have oftentimes been seen as rather peripheral figures, have become more and more key players in aligning and then also shaping corporate, but also climate strategies. And of course, it's now about bringing these two people together, or at least, or the departments together. So really having CPOs leveraging their supplier networks to adapt sustainable practices, but then also CSOs to steer the broader strategic vision to really then also align decarbonization efforts and overarching business goals. And while this is, of course, easily said, it's not so easily done. And this is where I would like to hand it over again to Lara to answer some of the key questions also that we heard at the Climate Transformation Summit when it comes to balancing cost considerations with sustainability. What does the shift in roles then also mean in practice?
Yes, so I think main insight was really CPOs are becoming the supporting leaders for sustainability. So in a lot of companies, there's a new role and or people are enhanced in their roles, which is called sustainable procurement or sustainability procurement. So those people are mainly now leading the Scope 3 decarbonization, and it becomes part often also of their benefits and so on if they really reach this goal. But then having been said that it's not about one person being now the change maker and having to do everything, it's very much about cross-functional collaboration. Everyone has in this area working on that role has so many different departments they need to connect with. They need the data from somewhere. They need the very practical operations and procurement. They need to be sure they have everything for the sustainability reporting and so on. And they need to be sure they stay in line with the business KPIs. So there are certain goals often communicated and targets for the company, which include staying in your carbon budget, and then very much understand how you can reduce emissions and go forward from there.
Thank you so much. And with that, we covered it all, the 5 key topics that we also discussed at the Climate Transformation Summit. And It was a lot of words that we've been already sharing with you today. And of course, the big question is how to move to action, how to bring all of this into the real world. And this is where I would like to hand it over to Isabel, our dear colleague from Climate Choice, who is leading a big chunk, so to say, of our work by leading the Scope 3 Action Group. And this action group was actually also one of the results from the last summit from 2023, where a lot of people also said, oh my goodness, this is costing me so much to understand how to implement it. And out of it came this effort of the Scope 3 Action Group. So you can also see that the talk doesn't stop at the summit, but there's also a lot of key takeaways for us and our work that we take out of it. And with that, I would like to hand it over to Isabel to share with us what exactly the Scope 3 Action Group is all about.
Yes, hello, and also thank you, both of you, for sharing all the insights. I think you need to stop sharing so I can share my slides. Okay, yes, we already heard it. But also, again, looking at the time, I tried to speed up a little bit. It's all about now getting from work into action. Briefly about myself. My name is Isabel Fischer. I'm operations manager at Climate Choice and leading the Scope 3 Action Group. And Josefa already mentioned it. It was a result from last year's summit, actually. Talking a lot about it is not enough. We need to get into action. This is how the Scope 3 group was founded back then. Now it's been more than a year and already more than 30 companies that have already successfully completed the program with us. And we are constantly growing the community. The idea is here to grow really like a supportive network of Scope 3 practitioners. And why we actually started doing this, of course, the summit, the idea to support companies further, but also, and I think Lara mentioned it before, the questions that arise and the challenges company face around the mass of data in the supply chain, where to start here. So questions that often come to us as a company is like, how do I collect all this data? How can I actually use the data that I collect then for my Scope 3 roadmap? But on the other side, also, how can I use it in first steps to segment my suppliers, to ensure that they are also developing further and also manage the development? And of course, the participants of the Scope 3 Action Group are mostly from climate or procurement teams. But think about like all the other stakeholders in your organization who also need supplier-specific data for decision-making, talking about product teams or even sales teams who talk with customers every day about it. With this, I want to give you like a short overview what the Scope 3 Action Group is actually about. So we have 3 modules. And the first module, we dive really deep into this whole topic of data, bringing some sense to it. Also like showing you all the complexity behind it. We heard it before, it's not just emissions data, but much more than that. But we also have a look at your own climate performance, see what are risks, but what are also opportunities and how do you compare to other participants in the group. With this, we laid a foundation for the second module, where it's all about supplier engagement and actually starting to reach out to your suppliers, doing like a first analysis, and then using this data for the third module, where we really go into developing your Scope 3 strategy. The idea of the Scope 3 group is not that we do like or try to educate you on this. There is no golden way yet on how to tackle Scope 3. But of course, we from the Climate Choice want to share all the experiences and learnings that we gathered over the last years, especially with the last groups over the last year. But the focus of this program is really the networking and the exchange of practical insights with other practitioners who are actively working on the same topic as you do at the moment. And then, of course, the third one is implementation. So the idea is that you learn online, but then transfer it individually to your team and to the needs of your company. Especially the input part, it's not just us. We are collaborating here with our partners who are all giving a masterclass on their topic of speciality. So we have a masterclass on Scope 3 accounting, where we get some insights on how you can improve your Scope 3 calculation by using specific supplier-specific data. We have a masterclass on climate targets in Scope 3 with a focus on science-based target. And then the third masterclass is also all about how you can integrate the topic of climate into existing procurement processes. And yeah, again, from word to action, I briefly want to show you like the 3 major steps on how to kickstart your scope journey, and also the steps and tools that we are working on in the Scope 3 group. Yeah, first of all, we do the analysis of the supplier base. So you have the chance as a participant of the Scope 3 group to use the Climate Choice software, where you also have access to almost 50,000 data profiles that we already have in there. And with this analysis, there's like, yeah, some of the example questions you can see here on the right, like how many of your suppliers are actually able to provide emissions data at the moment? Are they able to provide this data on a company level or even on a product level? Which of your suppliers already set targets? And also what decarbonization measures are already in place? Secondly, yeah, it's all about like the prioritization for engagement. So here we cluster with the help of the results your suppliers according to climate maturity and Scope 3 impact. And then find also like measures for each of the categories in order to then use it for your Scope 3 strategy. And here again, we have like several tools and methodologies that we provide and use in the Scope 3 action group. This is just one example. It's the Scope 3 strategy canvas that can also be downloaded from our website. But as Josefa also mentioned, you will find it also in the best practice guide of the summit. And then now let's really get into action. The next group actually starts already next month. The kickoff is on the 17th of October. If this is for some of you too spontaneous, we already also have the next cohort set up. It will be in March 2025. However, for the upcoming group, I wanted to give you a short overview how the program looks like. It's usually a 4-month learning journey. With the kickoff in October, the final event in February. Those are usually in-person events with a focus on networking and getting to know each other, while all the modules are usually 2-hour online workshops, plus there will be additional practical tutorials where we go really deeper into the implementation and specific questions that you may have on your journey. We also take a fee for your participation. This depends on your company size. And to not go into detail here, pretty much everything I mentioned before will be included. So yeah, now it's really time to take action, join the Scope 3 action group, save yourself one of the last spots for the group starting end of October, or if this is too soon for you, save yourself or get yourself an early bird offer for the next group until mid of December. And with this, I guess we are right in time. Hopefully, I don't see the time right now, but are there any final questions? I would give it back to you, Josefa.
Yeah, thank you so much, Izzy. And I'm amazed by the speed and velocity that you could bring into this. But of course, we will also share the information again on the action group afterwards. What I would like to do now, because the questions we have already been answering them in the chat, then also during the session is, Lara, if you could bring on that last question on whether or not you would actually recommend the session to colleagues or peers that are working in Scope 3. It would be super helpful for us if you could please put in your answer. It's anonymous, but it helps us to then also see how you liked it. You know, if there is a lot of improvement that we need to do. You know, it was a lot of content that we've been throwing at you, and yet we hope that we could take you with on our journey to, yeah, speak a lot on words today, but then also to trigger your interest to move into action afterwards. And yeah, we will, of course, then also share the results afterwards with you in the chat, but it looks very nice. So a high percentage of you would definitely then also recommend the session to others. And luckily, we've been recording it, so you can even share it with your colleagues if you wanted to. And with that, I wish you all a very beautiful afternoon. We will share with you the best practice guide. And if you have any further question, then also please feel free to ask Isabel, Lara, or myself at any point in time. And yeah, see you then. Bye-bye.
Yeah, thanks a lot. From my side as well, was a pleasure. Thanks, Josefa, for doing the whole moderation and for everyone being there online. See you soon in our next choice events. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.